Hi everyone, and welcome to Chop Chat Cook. Today I've got Dhara in the kitchen with me. Welcome, Dhara.
Thank you.
And it's very exciting because Dhara's going to be talking about all the things that are passionate to her, and we're going to hear all about those. And we're going to have a delicious chai tea. Now Dhara's also going to tell us a lovely story around why she's chosen to make chai today. And we'll kick it off. Well, welcome, Dhara, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me here and sharing my special recipe of tea today.
I'm really looking forward to having some.
And so I'm Dhara Shah. I'm a senior lecturer with Griffith Business School within the Business Strategy and Innovation Department. And I'm leading two projects at the moment. One is the Sister Support Business Together project. It is a social innovation action research project. And the other one that I'm co-leading is about going global, Indian women entrepreneurs. And these are all social entrepreneurs. And we're talking about taking them through a different journey to bring them to an international market, giving them that exposure and looking at their motivations and whether the successes happen after they've got those exposures. So both of them are action research, and I'm very, very excited about those projects. Yeah.
No, and congratulations. Because I think I've had a little bit to do with the Sisters program, and just so excited about it because I think it's really targets an important need, doesn't it? Like working with women who are over 50 at risk of homelessness and helping them sort of identify ideas for small businesses. And it's so needed, isn't it?
It definitely is. I think one of the key things behind that project and the way that whole project came about was because, a few years back you would have seen in the news there was this whole tsunami of homelessness amongst women. Mm-hmm. Nobody was sure about why this had not, this has almost been a hidden thing within Australia for a very long time. So I started looking for answers as to what was going on. Why is there this sudden influx? And some of the answers came through because a lot of them were not in the job market as such. They had taken time off for caring responsibilities, and all of a sudden either domestic violence, which is a common case within a lot of the women folks that we have met. The other one was just husbands passing away, husbands leaving, children, leaving homes, and now they've got these big homes that they couldn't afford or couldn't look after. And when they go back into the job market, there are no jobs for them because
they're out of the workforce
for a long time. And after 50 years, generally in Australia, it takes over 65 weeks for anyone to get a job back,
65 weeks.
So it's quite
it's quite a long time, isn't it?
And then if you have been away from work for that period of, if you've got these long breaks, then that really creates a lot of, it makes it worse.
It does, makes it really hard.
Yeah, so I have been learning a lot of these models. I've been designing these community internships. And from that, I learned all these microfinance models and how a small grant given to women, and bringing them together in groups and asking them to work on their passions can actually uplift them, build them up and build the whole community. It has health implications, all of that, because as we, being in those situations, they get socially isolated when you don't have money to go and get a coffee, for example.
Yeah, it makes it much harder, doesn't it? And you can't really, it's embarrassing, isn't it? So they're not going to say, oh, look, I'd love to come and have a coffee, but I can't afford it. Exactly. And it's complicated, isn't it?
It is. And so I think that's where because in terms of my background, just to take a step back, I have been a cross-cultural consultant before, and I studied the India and Australia cultures. I've written some articles on that as well. So that's been my expertise. So I started understanding what are some of these cultural expectations within Australia? What would work? These are all from overseas models. I can't just bring those models into Australia. So I had to, tailor it to the Australian need and understand, all right, these women are in these situations. These are what they would require in terms of the support. And so the program that we designed has been around those needs, around what it is that would work. So we get them to catch up with other sisters in the project to beat that social isolation. We get them to form those networks, those groups, those connections. We give them training. We have mentors that support them. We do regular catch-ups with them to understand how they are going. So it's a lot of involvement from our end, which is what is required, but yet they are independent on their own to actually take that journey themselves. So we make them independent while being right next to them, walking with them through that journey. So yeah, it's been a very interesting journey for me personally to, be involved in all our beautiful sisters' lives and take them through that as well, whole process. And we've had some successes. Many of our sisters have started their businesses. Some have had to put them on hold because of COVID. But overall, I think it's been a fantastic journey and a learning experience for us.
No, it sounds great. It's been going for a couple of years, you said, hasn't it?
Since last year, 2019.
2019, and then it goes until next year.
Next year, March.
And then you're going to look for sort of additional funding?
Yeah, so my idea is that I do want to continue doing a longitudinal study to understand whether these women go back into the labour market, that's one, and also if there are other funding opportunities to be able to be a bit more hands-on and involved with other sisters or with our current sisters. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, no, there's lots of really interesting ideas there. Now, the other thing that I was really interested in talking to you about, and you mentioned this earlier as well about when you moved to Australia, and that sort of started your whole journey with Griffith University as well.
It's been quite interesting. So I came from India and I did a master's degree in India. I worked in an advertising agency in India. And one fine day, my husband decided that he wanted to do his MBA in Australia. We packed our bags, thought, Australia, it's a new country to explore. And
Brisbane.
So we came here, and I think since most of my research has been about, about these experiences, my first experience of being by myself in after coming here, it was, I think, 5 days later, I was sitting outside. It was 4:00. It was July 2002. And I remember it, I don't know, for some reason I felt that was the coldest year, that Australia or Brisbane has ever experienced. And there was not anybody on the street. It was 4:00 in the afternoon, nobody outside. I was sitting all alone. Imagine coming from Mumbai, where there is always, traffic, noise, even at 3:00 in the morning. And it was just very quiet. And I just sat there going, I could actually hear my own thoughts, that's how it was.
That's funny.
But those experiences were very interesting. I think it kind of made me realize that there's a lot more going on and in life, that I had not expected. And I thought a lot at the start, but it got me into QUT.
Interesting.
I remember walking in and picking up a course. I just thought, why not? Let's just take up a course. And I did a international human resource management course there and a couple of other HR courses. And I found myself in one of the projects that I was doing there, and it was about expatriate families. And I'm like, oh my God, everybody goes through what I went through, and I wanted to study more on it. And then I enrolled into a master's with honours program at Griffith, and I did my first research on Australian expat spouses and children. So I was talking to children. I didn't have kids of my own at the time, and I was like, I don't even know what to talk to them. But I got a lot of training in terms of interviewing kids and playing games and how to engage with them. And I think it was one of the best experiences I had, because in all the all the interviews that I did, I felt like there was something missing that I could actually, enter into. I could help, I could do this, I wish I knew this, I wish she knew it. So it was a really interesting journey for me because I'm not like a typical researcher who, I do get involved in my research. For me, my research is my passion, and I work on projects that mean something to me. It's not just about, oh, this is a great project and I'll do it, but it's more about what is it, what I can bring to the table.
I think you're spot on there. You've got to be really passionate about it, haven't you? Because I think it's something that you work on for many, many years, isn't it? And sometimes projects become, they become part of like who we are, don't they? So,
and I think when you do it, it's different when you are putting yourself into that mix. When you are passionate about the research, you're more engaged. And even your participants see that, even when you're writing, it comes through because it's you who is, getting that involvement is very different to just being somebody as an outsider looking at something and writing about it. But during that process, then I went into my PhD. I started studying Indian IT workers who were not typical traditional expatriates in the real sense.
Okay.
And I started looking at a lot of discrimination, a lot of issues that they were facing when they were sent from India to Australia, and what were multinationals doing or not doing right. So I wrote some papers from that to actually, identify that, they're not expats in the typical sense. They are literally seen as a resource.
Oh, okay.
And
so they get sent over by their company
for projects. And it was a really hard one for me because I do get quite involved. So I had to start writing a reflective journal for myself because a lot of the stories that you hear, a lot of their experiences being separated from families, not being allowed to go back home, otherwise they lose their jobs, and
Well, that makes it really difficult, doesn't it?
Yeah, so it was a very interesting study, but from that study I identified women in particular had very different experiences, and at the time I hadn't I just had about 7 women in that study of 52 expats that I had studied. And so I'm like, this is something that I need to find out. What's going on there? So that's where my journey began. And I got after my PhD, I got my first new researchers grant through the Griffith Business School to work on that particular project. And so we studied women IT work expats. And what were their motivations? What were their challenges? What are some of those HR policies that really keep them behind? I even interviewed HR managers from all the big IT companies in India. It was a very interesting study because of something that you mentioned earlier, those unconscious biases that are always creeping in. Oh, I'm looking after her. I know she can't do it. So I don't even want to, approach her with the project because I know she can't take it. So those nurturing kind of a role, but in the same end, having those biases. And in some ways, the thin line between that discrimination, that women never got those opportunities to grow because they never had good projects that they could work on.
This is complicated, isn't it?
Yeah, so it was a very interesting research project. Again, we've written some papers from that. But something I mentioned earlier, it was my time to actually move into something that I felt like I'm researching, but I am not able to do anything about it. I was feeling like there was that missing piece that I had to contribute to. But prior to getting into academia, I forgot to mention, I worked as a cross-cultural consultant for a few years. And it was again to give back I trained a lot of expatriates, their spouses and families when they were moving to Australia. I had a tie-up with a relocation company. And so their clients were like BHP Billiton's, Santos. So I trained a lot of their expatriates. I did training for the North Queensland government councillors and mayors as well, the whole group there, to work effectively with Indian companies. At the time there was a Adani group.
Oh,
And
that sounds fascinating.
yeah, and I did a lot of training for organizations to work effectively within a multicultural environment. So it was a very interesting time for me, and I really enjoyed my work because I felt like I was finally giving back. And but at the time, I think it was 2014 when GFC's effect started happening on the mining companies. Okay. And I started losing my contracts, so
yes.
I entered academia
full time to look for something else.
Yeah, so that's how I got into these different research projects, and one after the other, it has been that movement. And then I wrote up these two projects. One was the Sisters, and the other one was the India project.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's really interesting. I think our chai might be ready, is it? I love the fresh ginger. I think that really gives it
a really nice...
it does. It really gives it a lovely flavour, doesn't it? And a kick. It's got a real sort of refreshing kick.
And I think even the mint in itself is very... the smell of the mint, and just, I think overall, it also becomes like an immunity drink at the moment.
I think you're right. I think you're spot on. And I think the other thing that I love is the peppercorns, because I wouldn't have thought to put peppercorns in it.
Pepper is, one of the key ingredients for the spice. And so the spice in itself is actually a mix of my mum and my mother-in-law's recipe. So my mum doesn't like it very spicy. My mother-in-law likes it very spicy. So I personally like a bit of a mix of them. And so, and so I kind of make it, so my mother-in-law generally adds more pepper in it to make it much more spicier. So if you have a tea, you'll feel, oh my God. But it's also very refreshing. And my mum keeps it a bit more lighter. She adds very little pepper. So I make it a bit of a mix of both. But all the other spices are the same. My mum loves the fresh ginger in it and the mint and all. So it's a bit of a mix from both families that I have made my own recipe.
That's great, I love it. It's sort of about life itself, isn't it, really? Because when a couple get married, they sort of form their own culture, don't they?
Yeah.
So it's sort of like chai tea is part of that.
Exactly.
And it's delicious, I love it. I think the other thing you were going to tell us about is just a story about your grandfather, like that time that you made tea for him and his friends.
Yes, I think I must have been about 14. I'd never made tea before. And my granddad had some of his friends over. And I thought, I loved my granddad and I was very close to him. He passed away a few years back, but he's one of those very strong, personalities in my life, and I thank him for a lot of things that I have learned. But one particular thing was when I had made the tea for him and his friends, it was the most horrible tea. It was very bitter. I had added too much tea in it and too much of one spice compared to another.
The balance wasn't quite there.
Completely off. And it was very bitter. And his friends had one sip and they were like, you can't drink it. But my grandfather had drank the full cup of tea and said this was the most delicious and the best tea I've ever had. And, much later, I realized that it was so horrible. None of his friends could even take more than a sip of it. And he drank it because for him it was like my granddaughter had made tea for the first time. And it was very special for him. So it's a very special story for me. And I think every time I have my tea, now when I get it all right, it's a memory that I have a very fond one.
Oh dear.
Yeah,
that's lovely. I think probably sort of coming to the end of the interview now, aren't we? So is there anything else that you'd like to sort of tell us about, Dhara, or share with us?
No, I think overall, just one thing that this whole journey from Australia to so from India to Australia has been a very interesting learning for me, and I think I'm thanking all my experiences and everyone that I have met through my journey to be where I am today and what I am today. So I think I'm very blessed to have all the lovely people in my life and everyone who came and stayed and came and went, So that's on that note I'll say thank you.
Oh.
And I'll send the chai recipe that you can post.
Oh yes, that'd be great. Thank you. Well, thank you, and I think your passion for working with women really shines through, and congratulations on all your work.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's a very exciting space, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, just the whole idea of empowering women and realizing that we all have strengths and we all could be one day here and one day there. It is about all of the women coming together and holding each other up. And I think I'm hoping that there's a world that, not just women actually, everyone just coming together and uplifting each other is a very, very important step that the world needs now.
Yeah, I think so. Well, thank you on that note.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time.